One of the biggest weak spots for many guitar players is harmony. Having a comprehensive understanding of how notes interact with one another to create chords is something we often fall short with, especially when compared to piano players. Now, part of this is due to the fact that guitar is not laid out in a linear fashion. For example, there's only one place to play a middle C on a piano, but on guitar we have 5 places we can play that exact pitch. We're also limited by the fact that we only have 6 strings. Now, all this creates some physical difficulties that can make it hard to see where notes lay out on the fretboard. As a result, a lot of guitar players end up relying too heavily on stock chord shapes. But today we're going to remedy this by breaking down how chords are actually built and how we can take these stock chord shapes, break them apart into smaller triads, and use those triads to expand our chord knowledge all over the fretboard. So let's get some of the basics out of the way first. A chord is built by playing every other note of a scale, and it's really easy to visualize when we go over to the piano. For example, a C major scale is all the white keys. So all we have to do is start on C, then play every other key, and we get a C major triad. Then we can skip one more key and add a major 7 and get a C major 7. From here we have what's called the upper extensions, the 9, the 11, and the 13. Any of these notes can be strung together to create different types of C major chords. And within this stack of notes is a series of triads, starting with a C major triad, then an E minor triad, then G major triad, then a B diminished triad, and finally a D minor triad. Now this is pretty simple to see on piano, but when we jump over to the guitar and play a C major chord, we tend to play these stock chord shapes that we all learn when we start out. But what if we use some of these extended triads? Let's start out by just using the E minor triad. That's the second triad in that stack of notes. We can play an E minor on the top 3 strings in 3 different positions. And when we put a C bass note underneath of that, we get some really nice voicings for C major 7. So now we can take these simple 3-string triad shapes and spread them out by moving the middle note down an octave. For example, we can take this E minor right here, drop the note E down an octave, and we get this E minor spread triad. Then when we add the C in the bass, we get this voicing. A really cool, unique voicing for a C major 7. We can do the same thing right here by taking the note G and dropping it down an octave, and then putting C in the bass. Really unique voicing. And we have one last one. We can take this E minor here, drop the B down an octave, and then put the C in the bass. Now, as you experiment with these different triads, you'll find certain ones sound better to your ear and certainly feel better under your hands. Now, we can do this with our other triads. For example, we can take a G major triad and play that in 3 spots up the fretboard. And when we put a C bass note underneath, we get some nice voicings for a C major 9. And of course we can spread these triads out too. We can take this, drop the D note down an octave, and when we play a C in the bass, we get really unique voicing with an open D string. We can go up here, drop this G note down an octave, and when we put C in the bass, we get a really pretty voicing for C major 9. And then finally, when we take this voicing and drop the B note down a whole step, we get this spread triad. Now, when we play the C in the bass, it becomes kind of a handful. So what I like to do is actually, instead of playing this G note here, I move it up to the B string, and then I get a nice easy grip right there. Now again, some of these grips feel more natural than others, but if you're looking for ways to break out of playing the same old chord shapes, This is a great method for discovering new things. So now let's take another type of chord. We're going to move up to a D minor chord now. Now a minor chord is going to have a slightly different set of extended triads. But for this, all we have to do is look at the D minor scale. And again, we can do our trick of skipping every other note. And then we get these triads: D minor, F major, A minor, C major, and then for our final one, we have to choose whether we want to use a D natural minor scale or more of a D Dorian type scale. If we use the natural minor, we're going to get an E diminished with that flat 13, and if we use a Dorian scale, we'll get an E minor. I tend to kind of like that a little bit better. But these triads can be used over the D bass note in the same way. Let's just take the first two, the F major, and play it over a D drone. So we have F major down here, right here, and up here. And then we can take our A minor. It's going to give us a minor 9 sound. So some really nice and useful sounding things right there with those simple triads from the scale. All right, so now let's apply some of these triads to a little backing track. I've got a simple little groove here that just goes back and forth from C major up to D minor. And these triads are so open, you really can use them to create parts in a whole bunch of different stylistic directions. To start out, we're going to play kind of an R&B inspired part. And over the C chord, I'm just going to use these basic E minor triad shapes. And then when we go to the D minor, I'll switch to an F major triad shape. All right, so let's take that same feel and vibe and come up with another part. This time we're going to use the next triad up in our little stack of triads. Over the C major chord, we'll use some G minor triad shapes, and over the D minor, we'll use some A minor shapes. And you can see how just having these triads under your fingers really opens up the fretboard and gets you away from playing these clunkier big bar chord shapes that we all tend to get stuck in sometimes. So now we're going to take our part in a whole different direction. The track is going to stay the same groove, same backing, but now we're going to use some of these spread triad voicings that just give us a whole different flavor. It's more of a open kind of ambient sound, not as percussive and choppy as sort of the R&B parts, but a little bit more flowing and open. So to start, I'm going to use some of the E minor spread triads over the C bass note for the C chord, and then over the D minor, I'll use some F major spread triads. And you can see how just having a good fundamental knowledge of the fretboard and of triads gives you so many options with coming up with parts. Everything from funky little bluesy and R&B things to more ambient, ethereal, spaced out parts. right, so let's do one last example with these spread triads. I'm going to take it up one triad of our little cycle here, and now I'm going to do some G major spread triads over the C chord, and then some A minor spread triads over the D minor. And again, you kind of have to use your ear and trust your instincts to kind of figure out what works good for you and what you like. But the real idea here is just giving you a method to experiment and explore. So at the end of the day, it really comes down to you. What sounds good to you is going to determine how you use this stuff. The music theory is just there to open the door to some new concepts. And having a good handle on the fundamentals of the fretboard, in this case your triad shapes, will allow you to explore and experiment with those concepts. But your ear is everything. That's the final judge. It has to sound good to you in order for you to use it. So my hope with these lessons is that I can shine some light and illuminate some new concepts and some new ways of thinking about the guitar, so you can find some new sounds and discover some new things for yourself. As always, thanks for watching. Take care, and I'll catch you next time.